Nobel Gundam Berserker Mode. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2Rs2Bs, gundam.tk, and as the high-grade Future Century Nobel Gundam in Berserker Mode spins around here in a ridiculous pose, well, you've already seen the unboxing, all the parts, and it all put together in Mobile Fighter Mode. Now it's time to hear all the good and bad things so that you can decide whether this is something you want to be picking up. As the Nobel Gundam screams at the sky saying, "Why Neo Sweden? And why Bandai did you make me with some sort of flaws?" Well, let's go through them so that you can identify whether it's something that's fixable, passable, or something that you do or don't need to worry about. The big one for me is that when I heard that the Berserker mode was coming out, I expected this kit to be pretty much all red. And if you go and you look at the anime when there's an aura around her, and of course the aura is red, the kit itself, well, you can't really quite see under all the rage. But this, when you're looking at it, just comes across as being white, and for me that's really unfortunate. If you're going to be spending the money on a color variant, especially like a Trans Am one, it shouldn't look 90% the same as the regular one. Yes, the pink is bright, and the orange is bright, and it's purple instead of blue, but everything about this just could have been a lot better, and it's what stopped me from getting some of the high-grade 00 kits in Trans Am, because a few of them just weren't different enough. Now, in terms of other problems, here's a small, strange one. The box at the beginning, when I bought it, it didn't want to close. They were sitting on the shelf all stacked together, and all of them, the lids were all just popped off a little bit, which is because the hair was on that D plate, and that D plate is massive. Standing up, making all the plates, it doesn't want to close. And that's not a big problem, but it's something that in some stores when you buy them, they'll actually let you open it up. And this is especially true in secondhand stores, and actually count that all the plates are inside. You just might want to be careful that your D plate is in good shape and not torn off, and that you've got plastic chunks missing, because if it's broken, that could be a problem to fix. Now, what about the seals? The seals so far on the hips and around the neck, they haven't been an issue for me with my regular Nobel Gundam. I just hesitate. Who knows, they could peel off over time, especially just the fact that they overlap on top of each other. That could cause a few problems, but so far, so good, so not necessarily a bad thing. Where you do have a problem is in the posing. I actually had the arms fall off a couple times, just at the shoulder, but it's the ankles. The ankles are going to fall off at the drop of a hat. And especially a lot of the Nobel Gundam's poses are based on the fact that it's got high heels, and that it can do things like stand on its tiptoes, or at least one of them. And if you can't do that without rolling the ankles out, then you're going to have problems. I was hoping that they'd have a better ankle mechanism in general, but be careful, and I think you can get through it. Now, what about the misleading box art? Not a big deal, but when you look at that, is that a beam sword whooshing across the bottom? I don't think so. Would have been nice if they had included the extra weapons, especially when they're including this kind of base to attach the ribbon to. Why not just throw in the ribbon? Of course, it would have cost Bandai an extra 25 cents or something like that, but it comes across as being a little cheap. But on the plus side, I'm glad we have the beam swords. Now, what about the big issues? First of all, you don't have a lot of new parts, to be honest. This is going to be a variation. It's not just a color variation, because you're going to get thrusters, which means you get a new pack for the schoolgirl top there, and then you're going to get a new set of hair. And the new set of hair almost by itself is worth buying. But if you're expecting a brand new kit and a ridiculously different color scheme, this is not the place to come. Now, the next two issues can be big ones, but you've got this display stand, which is fantastic. You've got two parts and you've got a custom attachment. And it was really hard in part 3 to not burst out laughing when I was saying that it did not fit and it didn't hold everything in and everything was falling apart. And you should laugh at that, because it's pretty funny where it attaches, but it doesn't do a good job. So Bandai, if you're going to take the time and put a custom attachment point on, you should actually make sure that it's going to work, especially when you're selling it on the fact that it can do Superman-ish poses, or Supergirl, or Superwoman, whatever, and it's leaning forward. If you can't do that and actually have it stay in place and it's just going to faceplant down on the ground, that's no longer a selling feature, that's a detriment. And here's the big one, the hair. It's its best selling feature, but also its biggest problem, because you've got a neck with a few points of articulation, and the fact that you've got that and all of that weight at the back, it's gonna flop down, it's gonna cause problems, and if you do it in a pose like this, you'll never notice it. But anything where you want her to be looking down angrily or things like that with the hair up, if you even tap it, the chances of it falling back are unfortunately pretty high. For those of you that dislike negativity in your reviews, though, now it's the good part, and there's a lot to talk about for this Nobel Gundam in terms of the good. First, let's talk about articulation. You've got great hip movement. The fact that you can get the splits and everything like that is great. The hips going up and down, it's unique and it suits this, and it's necessary for a lot of the silly things. It's not just a gimmick. The poses that the Nobel Gundam is meant to make needed a unique set of hips, and it's got them. You're going to get little things like extra manipulators, and the fact that the arms move around as well as they do is great. The peace sign manipulator, I think, is fantastic. The fact that you've got these ones that sort of look off to the side, and the fact that they're on a bend there on the peg, they just work. And again, the unique poses are possible because Bandai put in the extra effort of putting in the 5 manipulator sets. You don't have to swap these guards or anything like that. Everything is included the way it should be. Now, what about the extra parts? Well, I'm going to say that the thrusters, for me, look good. They're not necessarily posed at the right angle at the moment, but when you've got the thrusters on the back, and especially when it's diving forward angrily, it just seems like everything is the way it should be, because, hey, when you go into a super mode, why not have extra thrusters pop out from all over your body? And I'm glad that the Nobel can do it as well. Now the stickers, I complain that they might come off, but you know what? That green sticker on the front and the red ones are staying on pretty well. And the green sticker, it's just got the right amount of cuts on it on the front so that even though you're putting it around a round surface, it's going to stay on, and it seems like it's going to be staying on pretty well. Other things that you can say about this kit is that the colors pop, 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 as you could probably see on some sort of judged model show on television. The fact is, this pink really stands out, and especially when you put it next to red from any other kind of Gundam, like if you put it next to the red of the Exia, it comes across as very pink. The purple is anything but blue. The white body, it does look different when you put it next to a white Gundam. Not as much as I would have liked. However, the fact that you've got that orange and it just looks bright, the purple just has that little bit of gloss in it, and the pink, I think the colors, they pop. That's all I can say, and I'm pretty happy about that. And when you get into the Nobel Gundam in general, the proportions are just right, and I think that that had to be. If they had made this kit back in 1995, you can imagine that the proportions would have been all blocky, everything would have been poorly made. But with where they've gone now, Bandai, they can get things just right. It's slim in the right places, filled out in others, and everything about that is exactly what they need to make the Nobel Gundam come across as being the Smurfette of your shelf. But what are the other good things? We've got beam sabers, or beam swords actually. They come across as being a lot more fun than I expected them to. I already mentioned that the hair adds a lot of width, as you can clearly see, not to mention the depth. But when you put the beam swords in and you have them off to the sides, it just fills out and it puts in a sense of balance there from the top and the bottom. So I like that almost better than the beam ribbon, although the beam ribbon is really, really unique. I do like the double display stand and what you can do with that, whether you've got Domon on it or the other Allen B. I think that's a great idea. If the attachment worked better, I would have been a lot more happy, but the fact that they give it to you and it's in clear white, it suits this kit. But the big winner is the hair, and I could talk about this for a couple minutes. Try not to, but you've got 5 pieces, and you've got 2 positions, and yes, it's going to cause the head to come back, but the fact that you can keep it in place the way you're seeing it right here more often than not is just a win. You can imagine that the old Nobel Gundam just had a big solid chunk of hair that was just filled in. Here, the fact that you've got all of these strands and you can count them, and then the fact that you've got the layers with these 2 parts down below that are adjustable, the 3 parts on the top. I didn't put them in the up position all that often because I was already having enough problems with it, but the fact that you can have her with the hair raised above her head while the head's looking down, I think it's just fantastic and something that you just couldn't imagine years ago. And that's going to come down to my final point. If this was the 1990s, G Gundam, all sorts of kits came out, but no Nobel Gundam. And whether you want to call it the 6th Ranger or whatever, if you want to go to TV tropes, the fact is, I think people have been waiting 15 years for this kit. And the fact that the first one sold well enough that they released the Berserker mode, for me is incredibly encouraging. Maybe we're going to see a master grade down the line. And I've heard this thing, and I don't necessarily know it's true, but in Japan, apparently female figures don't sell well in traditionally male cartoons. So you're talking about in Transformers, Air Razor became a male in Japan, Nitro Convoy being female in North America, but in Japan that wouldn't float, so of course it was a male. Things like that. I'm glad that Bandai took a chance on putting out a female-shaped kind of Gundam, and the fact that they put out 2 of them shows that perhaps fans have responded. So good for Bandai for taking the chance, and good for the people that have done that, because not all of the kits that Bandai showed off as being under consideration at the toy fairs, I'm talking about the G Gundam, the HGFC God Gundam in shiny gold, hasn't come out, no sign of it on the horizon. So the fact we did get the variant here, for me, just happy to have it, and I'm happy to have a second one, despite the fact that it's not all that different. The hair and the different colors is enough for me. But what about you? What do you think about this kit? What do you think about the verdict and my videos in general? Let me know with a comment down below. Please hit like if you do, and subscribe if you're interested in not missing any other videos in the future. Here's some more HGFC coming out. I will be buying them all, no doubt about that. I'm pretty happy with everyone that I've got so far. Anyway, everybody, see you next time. Lots more reviews. Gundam.tk. Thanks for watching. Really? You're not into military guys? You're only into kung fu types? Really?